Today I went to the funeral of a man who died far too young. And he leaves behind his wife and 3 daughters. And it was a tragic funeral. And for some reason, there was a line that Tolkien had that I just read in The Lord of the Rings that has kind of taken on a little bit new meaning for me. And it's a weird line to put in place of this terrible death that happened here. But it's a moment that Éomer experiences in the Battle of the Pelennor. And in this moment, a lot of you know from the movies the death speech that Théoden gives. But in the book, Éomer is actually the one that gives that. And it's even more tragic. Because he just sees Théoden, who has just died. And then all of a sudden he looks, and this is what the book says. Then suddenly he looked at the slain, recalling their names, and he beheld his sister Éowyn as she lay, and he knew her. He stood a moment as a man who is pierced in the midst of a cry by an arrow through the heart. And then his face went deathly white, and a cold fury rose in him, so that all speech failed him for a while. A fey mood took him. Éowyn, Éowyn, he cried at last. Éowyn, how come you here? What madness or devilry is this? Death, death, death. Death take us all. Then, without taking counsel or waiting for the approach of the men of the city, he spurred headlong back to the front of the great host and blew a horn and cried aloud for the onset. Over the field rang his clear voice, calling, Death, ride, ride to ruin and the world's ending. And with that the host began to move, but the Rohirrim sang no more. Death, they cried with one loud voice, and terrible, and gathering speed like a great tide, their battle swept about their fallen kin and passed, roaring away southwards. And I think this line just takes a whole new meaning in coming to understand that this is Éomer speaking rather than Théoden, after he's just seen his sister, what he thinks is dead. I think it's one of the most hauntingly beautiful passages in all of Tolkien, and it's made me kind of reevaluate how this line really fits in, because when I first read it, I thought this was maybe more nihilism. But I don't know, maybe I'm reading it in a different light. I don't necessarily think so. I think this is more than just a call to battle. And I think in this moment, he realizes that everything that has given him meaning in his life, it's not really battle, it's not really any of these other things, but the real meaning in his life has been his sister and his kin and his king. And they're all destroyed before him. And in this moment, he's sitting there and he's just lost. And his world has collapsed. And what bursts from him, I don't think is really despair, but it's just like, almost like a clarity, I think. He's stripped of every illusion and this idea of having hope or victory in this battle or even just safety. I think all that remains is just this one truth, that death is coming for everyone. And what matters, I think, is how you face it. And I think it's really chilling of a line because it's both really human and at the same time really sacred. In crying this death chant, I think he's not just surrendering to hopelessness, which is what a lot of people do when someone they love dies. I think he's just accepting the reality before him. And the beautiful part of this line is that he's still choosing to act, to ride forward into it. Because he could just give up at that moment. And I think there's a lot of courage in that. When we lose someone, I think we often feel like a similar shock. Like we're just deflated, like an arrow's kind of pierced us and we can't really go on. The world just seems drained of meaning and of color. And for some, reason, some way, we just keep going forward. We just keep moving into the ruins, I think, of what was, and carrying love and grief together, mingled in these two things. I think Tolkien, who was someone who really knew war and personal loss, seemed to understand that grief isn't really something we ever overcome. I think it's something we just ride through. And I think Éomer's cry, again, is less nihilism, and it's more defiance. I think it's the spirit of him that says, even when everything is broken, I will still ride. And when I first read that line, I just kept thinking, oh, he has nothing left to live for. And so he is riding just to seek out his death. But I don't think it's really that anymore. And I think this is more defiance of this idea, where he's riding out, knowing that everything has crashed around him, and knowing that everything that he loves is gone. Everything that he loves is gone. And he's riding out because what else can he do? And then it's a cruel thing in death that the ones that we leave behind, or the ones that leave us behind, we have to keep living even when they're gone. And it's a cruel fate that we've all been given. But there's like nothing else that we can do. We just have to continue to ride forward, knowing that death is coming for us all, and knowing that while we are here on earth, we need to make sure our lives have meaning. I think infinite meaning. And I think Éomer does that in this moment. I think his cry is one of defiance in the face of death, but both an acceptance of it as well. And this line is just really sticking with me today. And I just thought I'd share that. So, thanks. And I'll see you in the next one.